Hello, and welcome to the Cass Health Podcast, the show where we hope to connect our community with healthcare information that's relatable, understandable, and useful to your life, and where you get to know better the neighbors providing your care here. I'm your host, Carter Anderson, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about healthy holiday eating habits with Cass Health's clinical dietitian, Beth Olsen. Before we get started, two quick disclaimers. First, the comments in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Cass Health. Second, the information in this podcast is not intended to be construed as personal medical advice. Always consult your primary care provider with questions and concerns regarding your health. Beth, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Kind of the first thing we want to get kind of rolling with is the stress that the holidays can present. You know, it's only one day a year, but it's only one day a year. Oh my gosh, we have to make sure everything's perfect and make sure everything falls into place exactly how it's supposed to, or it's a failure. No. Can you kind of like unpack some of that stress for us and kind of help people relax and realize that we're supposed to kind of enjoy the holidays and not be so caught up in the moment, I guess.
Absolutely. And, you know, the holidays can bring so many emotions. You know, maybe you get to go and travel and see family you haven't seen in a while, or maybe there's loved ones who aren't at the table this year. And so, you know, I think that it can become a really emotional thing, or, you know, especially if somebody's kind of taking over the role of, you know, that matriarch of the family or something who isn't with us this year. And they're feeling like they have to make it perfect to make it that childhood experience that they've always had or that their kids always had. And so I think for any of us who are kind of those ones preparing the food and the house and everything, a lot of people don't see all of that. And so you take a breath, like you said. It is just one day. And, you know, although you want it to be perfect, I think what, you know, I look back and remember the most are the memories of, you know, who was around the table and what we did and what we talked about. And so, you know, don't stress so much over all of everything being just perfect. You know, it's such a blessing to be able to come together with whatever family members are able to be there. And so just, you know, taking some time and soaking that piece in for the holidays, I think can be, you know, one of the best things we can do. And if that means some of your food is, you know, store-bought and you didn't make it from scratch, that's okay. If that stresses you out, then go that route and find ways to make sure you're not, you know, you're checking in with yourself and taking some of that stress off your plate too.
Right. It should be all the different parts of it should be positive, and you should find enjoyment in it. Like you should, if you want to have those things be homemade, you should do it because you enjoy it, not, oh my gosh, I have to make homemade stuffing. What the heck?
Yes. Yeah.
With those holidays coming up, like you said, it's kind of usually focused around a delicious meal of some type. That's usually where the main discourse happens, is kind of around the table. How can people kind of prepare for the holidays as they approach, like planning the meal itself? Kind of like what items you think should be on their shopping lists?
Sure. And, you know, for me, I always try and think of, honestly, my plate when I'm planning healthy meals for my family. And a lot of times I don't make it that complicated because it's just easier to have fresh fruits and vegetables and those sorts of things. You know, you don't need all of the salads that take a lot of extra work and time to prep into it, because a lot of people are just happy with, you know, some of the just plain things that you get every day in the grocery store. So don't feel like you have to go all overboard in that. Think about, you know, what are the staples? You know, I know when my mom's preparing the meal, she always sends out a text and asks everybody what their one favorite thing is. And so as the family gets bigger, that causes her more stress to make all of that food. But she does enjoy doing that. Though, you know, thinking about what are the people that are coming, what do they actually like? What are they going to eat? And what, you know, like you said, what brings you joy to make for them as well? You know, if they like the boxed stuffing, by all means, get the boxed stuffing and don't waste the time, you know, cutting up the bread and adding all the spices and making your own homemade stuffing, unless that's something you and your family enjoy preparing and eating. But so, you know, for me, when I'm thinking about the holidays, I kind of stick to the basics and think about how can I have something from all of the food groups and, you know, have some holiday favorites in there, but also still be providing my family with a nutritious meal.
So when your mom sends out that text, what is your answer to the question? That's like pretty important.
I have to have just one. I'm not nice. I always send her two things because I always have to have my grandma's homemade rolls. Those have always been a favorite of mine since I was a little kid. And then I'm kind of a sucker for pecan pie. I like pumpkin too, but I don't get pecan pie very often. And so if my mom's making a pie, I want pecan pie.
There you go. Mom's pecan pie
Mom's
and
pecan.
Grandma's rolls.
Yep.
Okay.
Can't go wrong.
Very nice. Are there healthier ways to cook traditional holiday staples that make them more nutritious for us while still tasting delicious? Or are there other things that you kind of recommend?
There certainly are ways, right, to make recipes healthier or swap some things out. I'm also probably a bit more on the mindful side of things. And so, I'd rather eat something that tastes really delicious. It's, one day a year. And so to me, it's not a big deal. And I would rather my family just really, truly enjoy that recipe that I've made, even if it's full fat, full butter, full sugar, all of that. It's one day a year. It's not going to hurt anybody. And, I think that that's really important for people to savor and really enjoy what they're eating. And oftentimes I share that with my my outpatients and the clients that I see, is that it's one day. So enjoy it. Don't spend so much time stressing and worrying about, how can I make this dish lighter or make, swaps to it? Because then you do that and it maybe doesn't taste the way your family wants it to. And then you have hurt feelings. And so, I think the better thing is to be more mindful, being in the moment, savoring those dishes that you like. And what I do when I go through the line, I look at everything that's offered and I think, okay, what sounds really good to me? And, just kind of taking a second to pause instead of getting a spoonful of everything. It's like, well, I don't really like this dish that much, so I don't need to put it on my plate. Or I get this dish all the time, so why would I put it on my plate now? And so I personally try and pick some of those things that I don't get as often throughout the year. And I savor and I really enjoy those. So that's kind of something I do to make sure that I'm enjoying those holiday foods, but not going overboard.
Mm-hmm. So kind of make just what you want, how you want it, and then enjoy the things that you really, really enjoy the most out of the.
Yep, that's the approach I take.
Right. I know lots of people like to skip breakfast on the days that they're planning on having a big holiday meal, saving their calories for that big meal. What are your thoughts on that?
Skipping breakfast is really not going to be wise. Oftentimes it kind of leads to that ravenous feeling, especially if you're doing a later afternoon or, an early evening meal with the family. And oftentimes we end up overeating then at that meal because we kind of are in the moment. We've lost control of, and we just start kind of wolfing it down, and then you get stuffed to the point where you're uncomfortable. And so rather than skipping meals leading up to it, I would encourage that people maybe you have smaller dishes and you're mindful of that, but focusing on making sure you're getting more fruits and vegetables at breakfast and lunch, especially if you aren't sure that they're going to be offered at that holiday meal. So kind of trying to get those fruit and veggies in for the day earlier in the day, filling up on those lean proteins, so it's okay to have smaller meals throughout the day, but again, focusing fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, don't skip meals. It's going to backfire on more people than it will probably be successful.
A little more harm than good there in that situation. So you kind of mentioned it there, but before we eat, we have to set the table. Are there any recommendations as far as like plate size and like how full those plates should be? I know typically like a dinner plate will have like a smaller like center ring, and then the outside will be like super decorative and pretty. Like, is there kind of like a guidance as far as those go? Or
and have you ever noticed that like sometimes our mom's china is like the plates are huge and bigger than our normal dinner plates? And so I do encourage people, especially if you're somebody that has trouble with portion size, use one of the smaller saucers or something that we'd maybe put our side salads on or something. Feel free to use that for your main dish, especially if that helps you stick to smaller portion sizes. I think that can be a really good way to kind of help you stay on track with having smaller portions.
Right.
So
kind of work on portion control that way, like you said. Just make it a little, literally less plate to fill in that regard. So I know, like we just talked about too, like sometimes it seems like that some of us like to eat at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, later than we usually have lunch, and the smells that are coming out of the kitchen, it's like, oh man, I just cannot wait. It takes forever. What are some good ways to kind of subside that hunger but still enjoy the meal coming up? Kind of like you said, is there good foods that you would suggest like having like out for people to kind of snack on as the big meals getting prepped? Or
Yep, and I do this just about every day too, Carter, not just at the holidays. So this is an everyday tip and trick.
Mm-hmm.
But if people are truly hungry, put out the stuff that they might not grab at that meal. So this is a great time to offer the fresh fruits or veggies, with a simple relish tray. I do that for my own kids in the evening. They get home, they're hungry from after school, and they're like, "I'm so hungry," and I'm like, "Well, if you're really that hungry, you'll eat this while I'm preparing supper." And then it's okay if they don't maybe eat as many vegetables at supper because I know they've filled up on that. And so same thing at the holiday time. I think that's a good thing to offer, before the meal, because then we're offering our guest, lots of vitamins and minerals. They're filling up on lower calorie foods, but that are also, full of fiber and tons of nutrients. And so they're getting kind of a good bang for their buck if they're munching on those leading up to the holiday meal.
Mm-hmm. Those carrots, those like celery sticks, kind of things like that you would typically find on like a relish tray for sure. As we build our plates, what should we try to aim for as far as like different food groups? Kind of like what should our Venn diagram, I guess, of our plate kind of look like?
Yep.
So.
I always encourage people to load up on the fruits and vegetables if those are there. A trick I always do is I often, if I'm going to a potluck or, a gathering with friends or family, I'll be the one to bring the vegetables because a lot of other people just don't think about it. And so if that's something that's important to you, be the one to bring that dish that's going to be a healthy food for you to choose and to load up on. And often when I am talking to my clients and those sorts of things when I have an outpatient consult, I encourage them to fill their plate first with those fruits and vegetables that are offered, and then thinking about, what protein source they want, and then filling their plate in with kind of those carbohydrate food sources next or last, and thinking about, what sounds good and how can I kind of balance out that plate. Absolutely, you should put those things on there that you enjoy or you don't get to have as often. And like I said earlier, what I like to do is I think about what's the spread here, what's offered. It's like, and if it's like, well, if this dish is offered multiple times throughout the year, when I come to this other family gatherings, I might skip that because I know that I can have that dish later on, versus this dish is only made once or twice. I'm probably going to go for that dish and grab that dish. So.
Gotcha. Just kind of being selective in the different. I feel like a lot of the time it's typically carbs that it's like kind of being selective in your favorite carb that you would like or your favorite thing and kind of going from there. With so many of those yummy foods available that we typically don't get other times of the year, it can be super easy to go for seconds, sometimes thirds, leaving us feeling really overfull. How can eating intuitively help us to kind of enjoy the foods that we love without feeling overly full?
Yep. And I think it's important to, for us to think about how, do you serve a meal where it's like family style, so all of the food's right in front of you that whole time, or is it more of a buffet style where you go through the line and then sit down with your plate? If food's in front of us and we're just sitting and having casual conversation, we're probably going to keep eating without even realizing it. So it might be an opportunity to move the food away, or maybe you want to switch up how you're serving your meals and not offer that family style offering where we all pass around the food and so I think it would be okay to have the food in, kind of the line in a separate room or something like that. But also, the nice thing about holidays is that we often get to see family members that we haven't seen in a long time. It's a little slower paced. People aren't off to the next sporting activity or wherever they're going. And so it's a really good opportunity to sit and just enjoy the company that is there, maybe play games as a family, whatever it might be that your family likes to do during the holidays. But we don't have to center it around food as much as sometimes our culture does, and thinking about some of the other things that come with a holiday outside of just the food and the fun flavors that we get to eat. And knowing that, you'll get to eat this food again. It's not like you're never going to eat this food again. So we don't need to just, go back for seconds and thirds and more helpings. Or you don't have to lick the bowl or clean your plate. Find a way to politely tell the food pushers that are often our dear grandmothers that, slaved in the kitchen. You don't have to eat more food. You love her food. You'd love to take leftovers home. But you don't have to clean your plate. You don't have to continue eating if you are satisfied.
Just kind of listen to that. We all kind of have that trigger in our body where it's like, okay, I'm starting to get full. I'm starting. Listen to that and kind of start to back it off a little bit and listen to honor your hunger signals, right? When you're done.
Absolutely.
There we go. Do you have any tips for picky eaters during the holidays?
picky eaters, I think that another opportunity is to bring your own dish that you'll know you'll like, if that's something that your family struggles with. Otherwise, I think it's an opportunity to, be a little more adventurous and try some foods. You may find that you like something. If you don't, you can just kindly leave it on your plate. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. But generally, I think that everybody can find something they enjoy and that they can fill up on. But again, I think it's an opportunity to maybe offer to bring your own dish that you feel comfortable with and that that your family will like too.
So you mentioned kind of doing the buffet style and kind of moving the food away from the table. After we kind of get done eating, we're still wanting to take that time to talk and kind of have discourse with our loved ones that we don't get to see very often. Is it kind of a good idea to maybe move away from the table and kind of chat with them in a more intimate setting, like the living room or somewhere else where like the food isn't going to be present anymore?
Absolutely. And, like I said, people can just keep eating if it's in front of them kind of mindlessly. They don't think about it. And especially if you're hanging out in the kitchen after leftovers are, kind of starting to be put away and that sort of thing, you can continue to eat and, kind of scrape the bowl out and eat that last spoonful. And so I think it is helpful to move that conversation somewhere else. Another thing is get out and go outside and go for a walk if the weather's nice. Maybe it's an opportunity to call some of your loved ones that couldn't come this year. We've started kind of FaceTiming long distance relatives that we don't get to see and just checking in and saying hi on those holidays. And so I think it's a time to, be grateful and thankful for family members and friends and kind of turn that conversation away from the kitchen and elsewhere, and finding some other ways to celebrate and be thankful outside of the kitchen table.
Right. Celebrate the people that are there with you,
Yep.
not just the food itself.
Yep.
Speaking of kind of celebrating and different parts of it, beverages and stuff like that, when you're having those types of things are another huge component that a lot of people don't really consider. Do you have any tips or ideas for kind of the holiday beverage consumption and stuff like that?
I do. Really, I'd encourage people to stick to more of those calorie-free drinks. Maybe you like water, iced tea, unflavored coffee, seltzers, those sorts of things. Because drinks are something that we can kind of mindlessly drink, especially if we've had a really salty meal. I drink water all day long, and especially after I've had kind of a higher sodium intake. And so if I was drinking something that, was significantly high in the calorie intake, then I could be drinking, lots of calories that I didn't even really acknowledge that I was consuming. And so I think, it's okay to have those fun, festive holiday drinks, but when we are drinking those throughout the day, it can really kind of sneak up on us. And so just making sure that we're making nutritious choices with the beverages that we're consuming too. And oftentimes if those drinks are alcoholic and we begin to have too many, then oftentimes we kind of make poor decisions. And so that poor decision can lead us back into the kitchen where we are then consuming too much food as well. And so it can kind of become a nasty cycle without us even realizing it. And again, it's mindfulness in the drinks we're choosing too, not just the food we're putting on our plate. Gotcha.
Just another thing to add to kind of the keep in mind as you're making those choices, like, hey, It all is a cycle, and it all has an impact on you and your overall wellness.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Awesome. What does the dietitian do with the leftover turkey? It seems like we all have a ton of turkey that we don't know what to do with. Do you have any suggestions for what to do with the turkey after?
Well, cook smaller turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been one thing that, my family's learned over the years is you don't have to have the huge giant turkey that's presented beautifully. You can just get some turkey breast, and, that meat's going to typically still be enough to feed, the family that's coming. And, everybody likes the turkey breast, and it makes great leftovers too. I like to freeze a lot of the leftovers. When you eat it day in and day out after Thanksgiving, it's like, wow, I maybe don't like this food as much as I thought I did. It tasted way better the first day. Mm-hmm. And so foods that can freeze, such as like the turkey breast, I'll shred it and I'll put it in casseroles or stews or other things throughout the winter later on when I, maybe want that good turkey, taste, but without having to go through all the prep work. So, I like to stock up on kind of the things that can freeze well. And then it's easy meals on a Sunday when I don't want to cook later, and that sort of thing.
So freeze it and save it for later instead of eating turkey for 17 days in a row. Till
and Carter, 4-day throwaway. I'm going to tell you that.
There you go.
We don't want to give our family members food poisoning either. And so think about how long your leftovers are going to last. And, I know I have that dietitian brain, but I do think about, okay, there's this much in the bag. How many meals are we actually going to eat at home the next couple days? And otherwise I'll freeze the rest, because I hate throwing food away, but you also don't want to make your family sick. So don't eat those leftovers too long unless you've properly stored them.
So it is about that 4 day. Is that 4 day in the refrigerator and then throw it out or freeze it at that point? Or is it kind of what is the
Yeah, I would say the 4 day throwaway is kind of the general, terminology. And if it's been in your fridge longer than that, it needs to go. If you've left it in your fridge that long and then freeze it and then rethaw it out, it's still like, you're still probably on the line there of, I probably wouldn't eat it. I know I tend to be a little pickier than most, but that's why I said kind of planning ahead and thinking through, okay, we're going to be home these nights. How long is my family actually going to want to eat this food? So it might be that you're freezing it ahead of time.
Kind of planning it out ahead of time after that turkey is done. So, well, Beth, thanks so much for taking some time to come and chat with us today. If you'd like to hear more about nutrition from Beth, check out our National Nutrition Month podcast that Beth did with us a couple months back. That was awesome. So thanks for joining us again today.
Yep. Happy to be here.